I had a chance to speak with Markie Hancock, who's the director of the documentary feature film Bloodlines of the Slave Trade that will play at this year's Kansas City Film Fest on Sunday, April 14th at 3:40 p.m. The director will be in attendance at the festival with the director Q&A immediately following the screening. You can get tickets right now at kcfilmfest.org. Alrighty, so thank you, Markie. So to start out, I ask all the directors this. In your own words, what is Bloodlines of the Slave Trade all about?
That's a tough one. It traces two people, one of whom is an older woman, white, whose direct ancestors were the notorious slave traders, John Armfield and Isaac Franklin. The second person is Rodney Williams, who is Black, and he can also trace his direct lineage to John Armfield. However, he is a product of rape from many decades back, obviously. But that's how his genealogy would link him to John Armfield, which sadly was a very common occurrence, of course, among the traders, among the plantation owners. And the film tracks their journeys as each of them looks at their ancestry in sort of a parallel path. They never intersect, they never meet in the movie. And I don't think they should. So it looks at the diverging tales of this shared ancestry, one white, one Black, and sort of tells the story of racism in America.
So it's definitely some very heavy subject matter. Certainly a very powerful and impactful film as well. Um, y- I want to know just starting out, what was the inspiration for your film, and what made you know that this was a story that needed to be told?
Right, great question. Started pre-COVID. COVID really slowed it down, a huge delay. But I really wanted to, it was post Black Lives Matter, which really brought the issue of racism in the United States to the fore again. And I thought, yeah, I would also like to talk about racism, to learn about racism. But I was also worried, well, what can a white person say? What stories can I tell? Should I tell? It's complicated. But I really do believe that racism, slavery specifically, is America's original sin or primal crime. And I don't believe we've in any way really examined it or come to any sort of peace with it or resolution. So I found this story. Unfortunately, I found the two protagonists, and I thought, yeah, this is a story I can tell.
And I think for so many white people, people are afraid to deal with this part of our history and to own up to this part of our history. And one of the things that really struck me about the film was seeing how people in the community where you filmed, they wanted to keep the name of a slave owner on a street sign, in the name of preserving history, and yet they don't want to reconcile with those very uncomfortable parts of that history. And so I guess I wonder from your own perspective is how do we get past that trepidation and that fear and that shame and confront this?
Exactly. That's a great question. That anxiety, because I had that question too. It shadowed me through the whole making of the film. What stories can we tell? Should we tell? But I actually, before this interview, I looked up a quote from Susanna, who's the white protagonist in the film.
Mm.
And I love this quote so much. She says, "We all have a story to tell. If you look closely at your own life, there is no way America's racism hasn't affected you.
Mm.
That is the start of your story." And I thought there's something really freeing in that if you're a white person, it's impossible for you in some way, maybe it's a small way, but it is impossible for you not to have been impacted by the legacy of racism.
Mm.
not your fault. You shouldn't feel guilty. We're not saying any of that. But if you start to look at that one small way, maybe you remember a kid in elementary school, maybe you remember, it could be anything. There's no way you haven't brushed up against it. And then when you look at that one small little story and you really take it seriously and think, how did that happen? What was that about? You'll see the ripple effects, and it will take you back to the horrible American crime that is racism. And that sort of frees you up to tell that story and then find the way to engage. But it is vexing. It definitely, how do we engage with this huge problem? But there is a way, and that's our job to find it.
And, I think the film is certainly an important part of that and a part of that conversation and moving things forward. I want to know for you, what do you hope is the thing that once the credits roll and the audience sees this film, what do you hope is the biggest takeaway that your audience has in watching this?
Yeah, great question. I hope that I hope that an audience member would re-examine the history of this country in a fresh light. I learned so much taking that journey with Rodney. It reopened my eyes, opened them fresh. So I hope that would happen, that we would have a deeper understanding of our history and how unjust it was, and how those ramifications are still with us. And then lastly, I hope that it would cause obviously a person to examine their own life, their own role. What can I do differently? How can I help even talk about this issue? How can I not be exhausted by it or think, oh, that's done, it's over, we have other problems, the world's falling apart, but to really still consider how serious racism is in this country, and the role that each of us can still play.
So certainly a very powerful film. So I want to thank you so much for talking. And to anyone watching, it's going to be at the KC Film Fest. So definitely go out, see this film. It impacted me, and I know it will impact everyone who sees it.
Thank you, Matt. I appreciate it. Thank you for the interview. Love Kansas City Film Festival. It's not the first time I've been there, so I cannot wait to come back. So I'll be there in person. So yeah, please come. Please come out. And thanks for the excellent interview.
Yep, you are certainly welcome.